Well, welcome back. This is Chapter 7, and we're going to do 5 different videos looking at Chapter 7, starting with this first one. And this one's going to look at security control principles. That's our starting point. From there, we'll move in and look at assurance models. We'll look at core services, recommended controls, and then talk a little bit about maximizing ROI on a security investment. But let's get into these security controls and start with their underlying principles. Here are the lesson objectives that we're going to have, or the agenda. We'll start with 6 security control principles, move into using components of the CIAA model for access, and then look at services and splitting those up into core services initially, and then recommended controls. All right, so as we look at controls, remember, controls are going to be these things that we put into place. It could be a policy, it could be a technology that allow us to protect the confidentiality, integrity, availability, and accountability of information. And as you're doing this, you want to look at 3 different states. I've put up on the screen the Macomber cube, but data can be at rest. It can be sitting in storage somewhere, and it has to be protected while it's at rest. It could be in transit, being transmitted across the internet, across a wireless network, has to be protected there. And it could be in the state of being processed, and thus needs to be protected there. So the threats and vulnerabilities do change while you're in those different states, and you've got to come up with mechanisms to protect while you're in each of these 3 different states. Here are the underlying principles that we're going to talk about. And again, keep in the back of your mind those 3 states as we're walking through each of these principles. And what I'll try to do is show you examples of where it's done very well and where it's not done very well in terms of realizing the security control principle. All right, so the first idea is that when controls should have the capacity to be shut down gracefully and restored automatically to the condition prior to shutdown. So an example of it not doing that would be the blue screen of death over on the left. It's not graceful, it does not restore, it actually doesn't communicate a great deal to even a very knowledgeable person of exactly what happened. You see in the middle screen something a little bit better, but my exposure with the check online for a solution and close the program, it's never worked. In years and years of clicking that button, it's never worked. It's never actually found a solution and closed the program correct. Well, it'll close the program, but it's never found a solution online. One that does work is Windows Word. Windows Word is auto-saving what you're typing as you go along. If it crashes unexpectedly, it allows you to bring that document back up and to recover from the last checkpoint, the last time that it actually saved the file. So that's an example of failure condition. Wouldn't it be so nice if Windows and Apple, the failure condition was to restore to the state that they were in prior to crashing, that they were able to do checkpoints like Word is able to do with your documents. It's a much more complex problem. Modularity, this idea that safeguards are modular, that you can plug them in, you can take them out, and they still work. A good example of this is, and maybe you can divine what that is, but that's a Alienware laptop, and what they have done is they have created the capacity for an external graphics card to be plugged in and to use that graphics card. And so that's this idea of modularity, that when the graphics card on the laptop is just not fast enough for the games that the person wants to play, you can actually buy this graphics card expander, plug in the graphics card of your choice, which means it's modular in and of itself, and continue to use the laptop and the processing power from that to play your games. Great example of modularity. A lot of security controls are not this way. They're actually linked to other tools, so putting them in or pulling them out is hard. Standardization, this idea that the controls should be applied uniformly across the entire enterprise, minimizing exceptions. And what I've highlighted here is this ability to update computers, to patch computers. There's no reason to do it 40 different ways across your enterprise. You probably, for at least your desktops, want to do it one way. There's not a lot of justification in doing it more than one way. And so standardization is an important control principle. It's one, again, that's very, very difficult to find in practice, because you run into different hurdles trying to get things standardized. People want control. People want exceptions. Compartmentalization, this idea that you want to take like resources, put them together with some boundary conditions, and protect them from things that are dissimilar. I used submarine doors as the example on the left. That compartmentalization in a submarine, I think, makes logical sense. But if you look over on the right, splitting up academic traffic based on its characteristics at a university, the traffic that is on the academic and administrative network is actually very different than the traffic that's on the research network. The academic and administrative traffic is very bursty. Research network, big chunks of data typically being moved. Internet of Things traffic, different than the previous two, and with different sensitivity. Resident hall traffic and guest network traffic all are dissimilar. And so you want to split these out, compartmentalize that traffic, have boundary definitions, and a very clear mechanism. They're still probably riding the same fiber out of the campus, but inside the campus, you want to split them apart. You want to balance operational constraints. In other words, those controls should not impose unreasonable constraints on a business function or operation. So I'll start with the picture on the right. Could we log in by giving a urine sample? Yes, we could. We could do DNA based on that, and we could, with 100% certainty, ensure that you are who you are based on a urine sample. But that's probably an unreasonable constraint on business. While people talk about wanting to pee on their computers, they don't really want to pee on their computers. And they don't want to do that every time they log in or out, or have to wait and drink a lot of water to log into their computer. And then finally, this idea of default configuration. So example of that being done right is over on the right, where if you move away from your computer, it actually logs you out and you move to a login screen. It's moved to the most secure position. Example of it not being done right would be a weapon. Most weapons stay in whatever state you left them. If you put the safety on, that's great. If you didn't put the safety on, that weapon is live, and a child can walk up, grab that weapon, and hurt themselves. So in an ideal state, there'd be a timer on the weapon. Wouldn't be actually that hard to do. The timer would revert to a safe state with the safety engaged if you put the weapon down for some period of time. All right, well, very good. We've gone through very quickly 6 security control principles. We've looked at various ways in which they work and don't work. It would be interesting to go back now and have that deeper thought, go through each of these slides and think about where we started, and that is the different states. What would be the most secure condition in terms of data at rest, in terms of data being processed, in terms of data in transit, and look at each of these 6 principles. Take a minute or two and think about that. And then think about some of the applications that you have that either exemplify doing this right or exemplify doing this wrong. All right, well, very good. This finishes up the first of 5 videos on Chapter 7. We're going to pick up in the next video looking at assurance models. So keep on studying, keep on learning. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.